Hello, everyone, and welcome to this special forum, which is entitled Acts of Magis, Ateneans at the Forefront of a Pandemic. The special forum is co-sponsored or co-organized by the University Research Council, and the Ateneo Research Institute of Science and Engineering. We are going to present to you experts in their own field, professors from the Loyola schools who have carved a name for themselves because of what they have done in society to respond to the needs. They're not just armchair researchers, they're also passionate individuals that want to do whatever it is for the common good. So this special forum is our way of telling our public that there is something that, not just that there's something that we're doing, but that we can harvest something positive from what is negative in our society. So I'd like to welcome you to this, and I hope that you will get to go home after the presentations, taking away with you a lot more hope and courage as we face the turmoils in our society. So welcome again and enjoy the presentations. Thank you.
Maria Regina M. Hechanova Alampay is a full-time professor at the Department of Psychology and the Executive Director of the Ateneo Center for Organization Research and Development, or CORD. She was a former chair of the Psychology Department and the former president of the Psychological Association of the Philippines. She finished her PhD in Industrial Organizational Psychology from Central Michigan University. Dr. Hechanova has many accomplishments and awards as a teacher, researcher, and professional for others. She was named Outstanding Young Scientist by the National Academy of Science and Technology. She was also named Outstanding Professional in Psychology by the Professional Regulatory Commission and received Outstanding Women in Nation Service Award. She has over 25 years of work experience in organization development, human resource development, and human resource management in the Philippines, Asia, and the United States. She has worked with a variety of organizations, including corporations, local government units, and nonprofit organizations. At present, she is the Chief of Party of the USAID RenewHealth project on expanding access to community-based drug rehabilitation in the Philippines. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought about a number of mental health concerns. In this presentation, Dr. Hechanova will share her experience in enabling resilience for those affected by the pandemic through a mental health support website by the Psychological Association of the Philippines called Katatagan Online. Dr. Hechanova will discuss the challenges and prospects for the online delivery of mental health support in the Philippines.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Acts of Magis, Ateneans at the forefront of the pandemic. This is our fourth session for this month. And again, we'd like to thank the University Research Council, or URC, and the Ateneo Research Institute of Science and Engineering, or ARISE, for putting this set of sessions together. And of course, I'd like to thank all the various team members who are working at the back end of all these things to bring these stories of hope to you. Before we proceed, we'd like to tell all our audience members that we are live on two platforms. We have a Google Meet happening right now, and all those who are part of the Google Meet may later on post some of your questions or comments, all right, and we will use them to interact with our guest speaker. But at the same time, we are streaming live through the Ateneo Facebook account. So that's something you might want to share with your other friends, colleagues, and families whom you think could benefit from the talks that we are sharing. So for the first three Acts of Magis sessions, we featured works that are mostly in the science and engineering field. We had one on the computer sciences, we had another one on chemistry, and then the last one was in mathematics. But this time, we're bringing someone from the social sciences, all right? Just to show to you that the acts of Magis are really widespread and a lot of people really can participate in this. So ladies and gentlemen, Please join me in welcoming our guest this afternoon, Dr. Gina Hechanova.
Thank you, Chris.
Good afternoon, ma'am Gina. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good,
Yeah,
Chris. Can you hear
you're
me?
good. Yes, ma'am. You're coming
Thank
in
you.
well.
All
All
right.
right.
Just wanted to
So I'll turn
check.
the floor over to you, ma'am. Huh?
Sure, sure. Just wanted to check if my slides are showing. Not yet, no?
Right. I can see your slides behind your main screen. If
Behind
you
my
could minimize, I
main. Okay.
yes. There you go, ma'am.
All right. Sige.
All right.
And is that visible to the public as well?
Yes, ma'am. We're good to go.
Okay. Sige. All right. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about how do we enable resilience in the time of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I also wanted to share our experience on trying to see how we can make our fellow Filipinos more resilient. Wait, okay. So before I begin, I also wanted to say that the work that I'm going to present today is really not my own. So I would like to present this in behalf of an entire community of other mental health professionals. In fact, some of them are with me today. So I'm seeing some familiar faces both on Facebook and in the Google Meet class. If this were a face-to-face session, I would actually ask people to stand up and to be recognized. Pero baka naman gusto nyo, paki-on na lang yung mic, cameras nyo at pakikaway to be recognized. But what I wanted to say was this project that I'm going to share with you, actually, we only began online. We were live just May 1. And today, the community has grown. We began with no funds. We still have no funds. So all of this is really just heart and soul from the people who are contributing to it. So it's composed of people who designed the site. It's also composed of, the community is also composed of people who are handling the back end. So the website, the creation of the website. And then we also have a lot of volunteers who've actually facilitated the resilience classes. So it is to them, for them, that I present what I'm presenting today. So what I will share today is what is the impact of COVID on our mental health and why it's important to take a public mental health perspective. What I'd also like to do is share a little bit about what kind of mental health and psychosocial support we can provide, as well as some of our data coming from our participants. Okay. And then I'd like to end with what are the challenges and prospects that we have in providing mental health support. Okay. So, we know that the COVID-19 pandemic is more than just about the physical disease. More and more, we are seeing headlines and advice from international organizations that mental health is another emerging crisis, and that its impact may outlast the pandemic. So even if people get well, some of them may still continue to feel the effects of it. So I want to stop here. And can I just ask the people in Facebook and in the room right now, can you just tell me how you are? What are some emotions that you have been feeling in the past, for almost 2.5, almost 3 months? Huh? So can you just type 1 or 2 words to tell us how you've been feeling? What are some of the not usual emotions you've experienced? So I'm going to stop a while and try to read out some of your answers. Anxiety. Thank you. What else? Overwhelmed, numb, roller coaster, and overthinking, right? Fear,
Worried.
yeah, anxious, right? And these are people, I know these people who have been answering, and they are people certainly who are normally, I would think about as very cool, very, together. So the fact that you are all feeling all of this might be anxious, cause of anxiety for you. But I guess I wanted first to say that it's okay if you're not okay, if you've not been okay. So the COVID has created a lot of impact on our mental health, from the more, I guess, normative cabin fever, right? So, inip na tayo dito sa loob ng bahay, to hypochondriasis, or the fear of getting sick, okay? To feelings of trauma, okay? Especially for those who have been stigmatized, feelings of discrimination, okay? Isolation for those who are alone, those who are in quarantine, cannot see their family or friends. Has also been a time that we associate with collective grief. So we are losing a lot of things, opportunities that we had planned. Some had planned to get married, some had planned to take a vacation. None of these plans are pushing through, and so there's a lot of grief because we are losing a lot. And so there's also a lot of anxiety, as you were saying, and despair. Kailan ba matatapos to? And when do we see, sabi nila, the plateau or the dip? Parang lalong dumadami yung cases even as we speak. And so the question is, when will this end? When will we have solutions? So there's also a lot of anger, frustration. Maybe it's to responses or non-responses. There's also a lot of helplessness. And for those who are at the forefront of it, we are also seeing a lot of burnout. Pagod na yung mga tao. But there are people who are more at risk than others. So first are the patients themselves. And just because they are well and they survive this does not mean there's no trauma. And in fact, there's now some studies showing that they are actually the ones who are, even after they're well, there's always that fear. I can be positive again, or have I infected other people? Will I be treated like a pariah because of what happened? We also know that older individuals are at risk, and the young ones are at risk. Why? Because their sense of belongingness, their links with their peers is gone at this time. Of course, we hear about frontliners. We're also hearing about those who are losing their jobs. Also at risk are persons with substance use disorders, persons with mental health illness, persons with disabilities. Okay, sorry. So we know that for the normal population, there's already risk. Now you add that to the about 13% of Filipinos who are said to be at risk because they already have mental health issues. So 30 million for a 100 million population. So you can imagine just the scale of mental health illness that we need to deal with. So the question is, how do we do this? And this is why I really want to advocate for a public mental health approach. And what does that mean? It means a recognition that the way that we used to provide mental health can't be the same. If you take a look at it, the ratio of psychologists to Filipino is about 1:90,000. The ratio of psychiatrists to Filipino is about 1:175,000. And most of these mental health professionals are in major cities. So there's inequitable distribution, with majority of them in the urban areas. Currently, most of our mental health services are not covered in health insurance. And even if there's a mental health law now that mandates that mental health services need to be delivered in various settings, we know that that's really not in place yet. There's also a big gap in what kind of mental health interventions we need to provide. And there's really a need to understand this context, so the COVID context. What kind of mental health interventions do we need right now? So when we talk about mental health interventions, a lot of times people think about counseling, therapy, because that's what we know. But there's actually an entire pyramid of what we call MHPSS interventions. And it really starts with basic needs. For the past months, some employers have been talking to me about what can we do for our employees because they have no work. And I said, you know what? No amount of counseling will help them if they can't eat, if they can't feed their families. So that's such a basic need. And we know that even in the emergencies, before you even intervene at a mental health level, you need to look at their physical health. Now, assuming that we are able to provide for basic needs, there are some psychosocial support activities that we can help. For example, right now, the gold standard for providing mental health right after an emergency is called psychological first aid, or PFA. Okay, so this is sort of like your first aid, but for mental health. At the same time, psychosocial supports or community supports can come in the form of infographics, videos, self-help information that people can use. Why? Because the thinking there is that this is an abnormal situation. So there will be people who will not be used to this. So there will be everybody or many of us will be really experience mild distress. But most of us will adapt. Okay. However, for those who cannot and are really struggling, those who experience mild to moderate mental health distress, then we can look at individual, family, or group interventions. Now, in the pyramid, you see that the topmost is what we call specialized services. And these are really for those with severe psychological disorders for which really therapy and counseling by professionals are needed. But what I'd like to talk about today is that second layer, which many people really don't pay that much attention to, which is not. So they're for people not diagnosed with mental health illness, but are mildly, moderately distressed at this time. So the intervention that I'd like to share is actually called Katatagan Online. And you can see the URL there. It's a very simple URL to remember. And what it is that it's a website, basically. It's a website that contains access to self-care materials. So there we have some mindfulness materials from our colleague, Dr. Lynn Wald from the Palo Alto University. So people can actually take a 9-session class on mindfulness. And it's just that, it's just mindfulness. We also have some infographics. We have some audio files. And those audio files are both in English, Filipino, and Cebuano. We also have some videos on resilience. And then we also have what we call resilience classes. So we actually named them classes because they are what we call psychoeducational. And what we're using are, I guess, online small group sessions or discussions with about not more than 12 people and facilitators handling each session. I'll talk a little bit more about the contents of that. And then we also have a link to those providing mental health services for free. So I'm gonna just stop here and see if I can just share with you very quickly the website. Oh, it rained, so my internet's slowing down. Never mind. Okay, so I just want to show you just a little bit about our site statistics. Today we have we average about 300 visitors a day. Not that big yet. Honestly, we haven't really marketed this full blast. This chart that I'm showing shows what time our visitors come to the site. And here you can see that it's either early in the morning or towards the evening. So we're getting sort of what do you call that? Sort of a U curve in terms of our visitors. Okay. What was interesting to me was that we're not only getting Filipinos from the Philippines, we're actually also getting visitors from the US, from Denmark, from Indonesia, from Great Britain, from UAE, New Zealand, Singapore, which means that one advantage really of this site is that it is reaching even our perhaps our OFWs. So what we did is in the site, when you come in, it's an optional registration, but we actually ask people to give us a little bit of information about themselves. So as you can see, most of our clients are actually women. So 80% are women. Why is this so? Is it because they're more distressed? Well, studies show that in general, women do express more anxiety and distress, especially during disasters. But also, women tend to seek help more than men. So I don't know if it's the macho culture or the need to be stoic, but that's also why men also die earlier, right? So in this case, so we have a majority women. If you can also see from our table, we have about 60% are in their 20s. So we are hitting that demographic, the young ones of or tech savvy of access to technology or who like technology. So we're getting the 20s and 30s. Okay. The map that you see of the Philippines and the numbers there show where our clients are coming from. So as you see, we've actually gotten clients from all the regions in the Philippines. Okay. But mostly they're coming from the NCR and region 4A. When we ask them, how has the COVID pandemic affected you? The greatest impact was in terms of loss of income and job and exposure to COVID because of their work. So that's where most of the people said had the most impact. So we're here, not so much the hospitalization or became ill. So we're not getting the patients in this site. We're getting those who are either frontliners or who have been affected because of COVID. And they also say that these are the people who have difficulty getting social support. So this kind of makes sense, no? That the platform provides the social support that they would not necessarily have gotten because they are isolated. Okay, so we actually administered a standardized scale called the Depression, Anxiety, and Stress Survey, or DAS. And we analyzed the data according to the norms that were set. And as you see here, 60% of our 435 respondents to this are still with what you call normal stress levels, right? But what is interesting is anxiety, okay? So almost 70% are above normal in anxiety levels. And then almost half or more than half are sort of above normal in terms of depressive symptoms. So those are the two mental health outcomes that we really need to pay more attention to. Okay. Now, what we also did was we took a look at to what extent are the COVID experiences, to what extent do they relate to these mental health outcomes. And so this table shows you which of the COVID experiences have the strongest correlation with these outcomes. So for example, I just wanted to highlight the fact that yes, loss of work is related to greater depression, greater stress, lower well-being, and lower resilience. But it's also the basic needs, as we said. So the difficulty of getting access to food and medicine. Okay. But for me, what was also super interesting in our data is that exposure to COVID news and information is actually significantly positively correlated to depression, anxiety, stress, okay, and negatively correlated to well-being. So on one extent, it seems counterintuitive, diba? In a disaster, we always focus on we need to communicate more, we need to provide information more. And yet, here we are actually seeing that those who have too much exposure to COVID news and information are actually also those who are more anxious, more depressed. In some ways, this is actually consistent to in a normal disaster, or when a disaster happens, sometimes we tell our clients, don't listen to the news, or don't listen, or don't view videos that uh, show the disaster again, because it's like you are being re-traumatized. So if you were to translate it to COVID, I guess if you're already angry, right, and your social media circle are people like you, so just getting exposed to all of this just fuels whatever it is you are feeling, right? And so I've actually known a number of people who will say, I've learned not to go online because it just stresses me, or I now have to regulate my use. um, but it also goes to what is the kind of information that we are sharing with people, because if it's really all bad news, then yes, then you will expect greater depression or anxiety or stress, right? What also is very interesting for me is the difficulty of accessing social support. And look at the numbers here, they're even higher than the other factors. So what does this tell us? That perhaps the COVID pandemic is really not just a mental issue. It's a social, it's a social disease in the sense, because of the isolation that it causes, and this whole quarantine situation. So that sense of I don't have my regular social support is really causing depression, anxiety, and stress. So, what does this mean? Like, what are some take, practical takeaways from here? So, obviously, those who are exposed to COVID, who experience income loss, have difficulty accessing food, they are also at higher risk for mental health issues. But beyond basic and physical needs, access to social support is critical. And so, all the more that social connection is important. That's why, and I think that's why even WHO has tried to change the label, diba, from social distancing to supposedly physical distancing, because you don't want people to socially distance each other, because we actually need each other at this time. But for me, from somebody who really believes in positive psychology, I actually also think that the kind of information we share is important. So, for example, when I take a look at information about the number of cases and all of that, I think that's obviously that's expected. But are there also perhaps indicators of how much improvement we are having in terms of our death rates going down? So maybe the way that we package information needs to be a little bit different, so it just doesn't increase anxiety. I wanted to share with you. I don't know how many of you watch John Krasinski, Some Good News, but his YouTube show has been such a hit because all it does is it shares good news, and not and just authentic gestures of people being good to other people or doing things for other people, which is uplifting, and heartwarming. I think we need more of that in today's world. Another thing that we asked in our study is, what are they doing? What have they been doing? And we were able to cluster our responses into four, their responses into four. So the first cluster is, we're labeling it accepting and perspective taking. What does this mean? So they're learning to live with it, they're accepting the reality, they're trying to look for the good in the situation, they're trying to see things in a positive light, so looking at the silver lining. And then there's another cluster of coping, which I labeled coping, active coping, which means trying to keep busy, right? Trying to do something to help yourself, trying to come up with strategies, trying to take action, so problem solving. There's another cluster of coping behaviors that are related to spirituality. So prayer, meditation, turning to religion or God. And then the last cluster of coping behaviors we've labeled social support and emotional expression, which means getting help, advice from others, getting comfort, emotional support from others, venting, expressing your negative emotions. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of that right now in Facebook, and on one hand that's good, but it can also be detrimental. So I guess the question is, are there coping behaviors that are more useful than others? And my answer to that is yes. Okay, we correlated coping behaviors with mental health outcomes, and what we saw was that in general, all of these coping behaviors are helpful. Okay, so social support, spiritual coping, active coping, acceptance, they're all related to better well-being and better resilience. What we also did was we measured um, the extent to which, and we label this mindfulness. So the extent to which they are aware of what's going on in their bodies or what's going on in their minds. Um, Mindfulness is about being aware of ourselves, and not just being aware, but being able to distance ourselves from it and choosing to act or not act on our feelings. So it's a way of coping with negative emotions without necessarily denying that they exist. Why is this different from, say, um, active coping, right? Because in active coping, you try to keep busy, but you may not be acknowledging that you are feeling stressed, that you are feeling anxious. And mindfulness means that you acknowledge that, yes, I am stressed. Yes, that I am anxious. And here, if you take a look at our data, it's really showing that it actually has the highest correlation in terms of all the other mental health outcomes. So what's the key takeaway here? That at this point in time, when most people are quarantined, there are coping strategies that appear to be more helpful. And right now, they appear to be spiritual coping, the acceptance that, and just trying to take a positive perspective in what's happening, and mindfulness. So just trying to be aware and accepting that we are feeling stressed. Um, I always like to think about mindfulness as the ability to know this is my state, but not feel trapped by it, right? And so, for example, we may feel cabin fever because we are all trapped in our homes, but some may feel that that is consuming. For others, that they may feel that's actually liberating. So it's actually a choice that we make. The feeling might be the same, but the choice we make about that feeling might be different. So the question is, if this is where people are at this point, what can we do to help build their resilience? And here, we're taking the definition of resilience to mean the process of adapting well amidst adversity, trauma, and significant sources of stress. So I want to tell you a little bit about a program that actually began in 2013. So it was after Haiyan, Super Typhoon Haiyan. At that time, because there were a lot of people affected also, we were seeing a lot of mild to moderate distress symptoms, emotional distress, cognitive distress, so guilt, inability to concentrate, feelings of hopelessness, behavioral distress, so inability to sleep. Some were using substances like alcohol and drugs. Some were feeling body pains, headaches, and some were beginning to question God. So why is this? Why is He allowing this to happen? And we created an intervention then as a face-to-face intervention, and we tried it out among college students, among community members, among displaced survivors, and we had really good results. And so, because of our positive outcomes then, we decided to try to bring the program online. And the program consists of 6 topics or modules. And in each topic or module, we try to develop at least one skill. And by no means am I saying that this is all that it takes to become resilient, but these are the most common. If you take a look at the literature, these are the most common resilience factors or skills that emanate from that have evidence. Okay, so we label the modules according to the following. So kalakasan, so findings, cultivating strengths. Katawan, managing our physical reactions. Kalooban, managing our thoughts and emotion. Kapaki-pakinabang na gawain, so managing our behaviors and our routines. Kalutasan at kaagapay, finding solutions and seeking support, social support. And kabuluhan at kinabukasan. So trying to find meaning in what's happening and trying to look at how can I use what I've learned for the future. So there is more hope. So the program itself has a number of sort of foundations, theoretical foundations. And one is positive psych. And positive psych, there's a lot of things in positive psych, but we focus on two things. No? One is remembering our strengths and gratitude for what we have instead of focusing on what's not there or what our problems are, focusing on what we are thankful for. And then the program also uses cognitive behavioral therapy principles in the sense that we try to show how our emotions like anxiety are actually linked to our beliefs and our body sensations and our behaviors. But it's hard to change emotions, right? So you can't just say, wag kang matakot. But if you try and drill down, what is the source of your fear? What's the belief behind that fear? And you try to change that belief, then you will see that once you change the belief, then the emotions, the behaviors, and the bodily sensations will also follow. We're also using mindfulness a lot in the intervention. All our modules begin with a mindfulness exercise, and we also do a lot of meditation within the program. So I actually wanted to do very, very quick sample. We normally do this in small groups, but I thought, what the heck, let's try it out. So I want to focus on the first concept, which is kalakasan. So if you don't mind, I'll ask you to type on chat or on your FB your response to two questions, okay? So the first question is, what have you discovered as a strength in this past 2 months? Ano yung pinaghuhugutan mo ng lakas nitong nakaraang buwan? Sige nga, can you just type out kahit isa lang, kahit dalawa? What have been your sources of strength in the past 2.5 months? Let's see if we have any responses already. So, what are we seeing? Faith, yan. Family. Learning new things, nag-aaral. Religion, okay? So, these are some, and these are very good strengths. No? Now, let's take a look at the other component of kalakasan, which is gratitude. And it can be different from your source of strength, no? So what are some things you're grateful for? What are some things that in the past 2 months you can say you're thankful for despite the crisis, despite the pandemic? So what are we seeing? Are we seeing any responses yet? Family, same, okay. All right. So we're also seeing, yes, that you have a job. For those of us who have full-time jobs, for their co-workers. Oh, somebody gets to go with nature. Doc Marlu, good for you. May saying, good internet connection. That's nice. I always watch your videos, May. Hazel said that no one in their family is sick. Yan. Sir Digong, hello Sir Digong, stability. So yes, right? So one more question, okay? For those of you who have been able to identify, when you think about these strengths, or when you think about these things that you are grateful for, how do you feel? So as you reflect, blessed, grateful, okay? What else? How do you feel? Knowing that you have these things that you're grateful for. Okay, so we're seeing happy, okay? And here's the thing. Science tells us that positive emotions make us more resilient because negative emotions cause us to feel helpless, cause us to narrow our focus. And once we narrow our focus on what's the problem, the tendency is we tend to catastrophize and dwell in what's wrong. And it's hard to get away from that. As opposed to positive emotions like feeling grateful, feeling blessed. Yan. Um, I'm seeing Kit saying good, feeling blessed, feeling less anxious, right? And so that's, I mean, I know it may seem so, commonsensical, but remember when we we're growing up, our elders would tell us, count your blessing, count your blessings. Well, there's a science behind that. And it works, okay? So that's just one element of the program. But there are other elements, of course. So, for example, in the program, we teach people how to manage their physical reactions to stress. And mindfulness is a big part of that stress management. What do you do when you feel anxious? So you just take a breath. You just take a breath, and you learn how to regulate your emotions by just paying attention to your breath. We also focus on reframing or kalooban. How do we change our negative thoughts? How do we tend to look at things from a more positive light? We also take a look at our behaviors and our routines. And I know, especially the young ones, and I know my kids are like that. So they don't sleep. So their schedule gets skewed. And it was funny because in some ways, not having a routine, that's not helpful because it sort of makes you feel that you're not in a normal state. So having routines, whether it's going to bed on time, exercise, making sure that you do things that you used to enjoy, these are important. And then, of course, because we do have concerns and we have problems, the program also focuses on problem solving. And you know what's really interesting from our experience is that we notice that Filipinos, when we ask them, ano yung pinoproblema nyo? Or what are you concerned about? Many of us, we tend to bring about, or we tend to cite concerns that are not ours. And I think it's the interdependent self or the collective self na marami tayong problema na hindi naman natin talaga sariling problema. So, may sakit kasi nanay ko. Okay? So, and it's the culture. But one of the things that we try to teach people in the program is you need to let go because there are some things that you really can't solve right now. So let's focus on what you have within your control and let's try to solve those problems. And sometimes just that mere decision to let go of certain things for the time being, that has a liberating effect that eases the anxiety. And finally, part of another resilience factor that we talk about is meaning making. So, meron ba tayong natututunan dito sa ilang buwan natin na quarantine? Meron nga ba? Meron ba tayong mga natututunan dito na gusto natin kahit tapos na tong quarantine, dala-dala pa rin natin? Meron nga ba? Meron ba kayong natutunan that you'd still like to continue on? So for example, ako, I guess I realized that I do have the patience and the adaptability to I haven't been outside my home since the quarantine started. Na kaya ko pala, kala ko gala ako. Hindi, kaya ko pala. So, and for me, that's good because, you know, we don't think this whole pandemic is going to go away kahit mag-GCQ na tayo. So, just that sense of meron akong natutunan. So, kung matapos man to hindi, meron akong dala-dala from this whole experience, that kind of meaning making. So each session, it's about 1 hour and a half. And this is the format of our sessions. So we begin with a mindfulness exercise. We review the previous session. We talk about the topic, and that discussion can be done in different ways. Minsan, we try to do kahit paano may structured learning exercise, or a discussion or a demonstration. And then we also try to ask people, so what have you learned? And do a preview of the next session. And then we close with a loving kindness meditation. So there are two ways that people can build their resilience. One is an online platform. So parang, I guess in our jargon, it's synchronous, meaning real time. So we are together at the same time, every MWFC at a certain time. And in a small group, we talk about it. But for those who don't have that regularity, they can actually view videos on each of these topics, and there's a workbook that they can fill out. So whatever works for you. So what have our participants said they've learned? So we've only been doing this since May, So since May 1. So we're just at the tip. This is all at the pilot phase. But our participants say that they've learned new ways to manage their stress. They've learned to find peace. They've learned how relaxing mindfulness is. They've learned how to chill. They've learned how to control and reframe their negative thoughts. They've learned how to problem solve, that it's possible to let go of problems, and that they say that they can use what they've learned to help others. Um, we we also did a small pre and post test study for those who in our first batches, and I think we have some facilitators here. So sharing with you the good news that our pre and post test scores are revealing significant differences in the ability for mindfulness, the coping skill of acceptance, social support, and spiritual support. So active coping, although you see an increase statistically, it's not significant, but it's an increase nevertheless. So we did, I guess the good news is, yes, we were able to build people's adaptive coping or their ability to become more resilient. So the question is, does it have a relationship on mental health outcomes? I'm so happy to get the results of this because we only have this is just 31 people. So I wasn't really expecting any significant outcomes because of the small sample size. But thankfully, we're seeing a trend here that depression, anxiety symptoms were actually significantly lower after the program, and well-being scores are significantly higher. Okay, so um, we're not just building their coping skills, we're actually influencing the mental health outcomes of our participants. At least this is what our initial data is suggesting. And our facilitators are also saying that the experience has helped them, and maybe the facilitators who are in here can also share later. So some of them saying that there's a satisfaction in knowing that they can help people despite the challenges. They say they became more tech savvy or they learned how to do online interventions, but it also helped them personally to become more self-aware. It helped remind them what they need to do for themselves. And it also helped sort of remind them about why these strategies that we try to use for ourselves are important. Having said that, the experience has not been really easy. There have been many challenges. Internet access and connectivity is an issue. So we've had dropouts also because people could not get in, or they would stall somewhere in the middle and just disappear. Some of our facilitators and even participants really new to these things, so they don't know how to navigate online platforms. Um, I think one of the more difficult aspects of the experience, especially for facilitators, is they really had heterogeneous groups. So you have from mothers to yuppies to millennials to frontliners in one group. Okay, there are also, because we were also getting people from all over the country. Some were challenged because of dialects, differences in dialects, and obviously the lack of face-to-face connection, the lack of physical cues, was a challenge for our facilitators. So sabi lang, hirap malaman engaged pa ba sila or baka bored na sila. And so may challenges talaga itong ganitong platform, especially for mental health services. We also acknowledge that this intervention is not for everyone. There are people who prefer one-on-one. There are people who will need more specialized care, and there are people for whom the mental health intervention is good, but what they really need are more, you know, pragmatic needs that obviously we cannot provide. Having said that, we think that this is just one way, another contribution to trying to build resilience amid the COVID crisis. We recognize that we do need a lot of work in terms of rigor, in terms of evaluation. One of the things we are looking at is, can we do intact groups instead? So, for example, can it be a group of all frontliners or all teachers or all students, so that there's a lot more, I guess, commonality in the groups. One of the things that I've been asked before is, what about the COVID patients? And are there any mental health issues? From what I understand, the psychiatrists, at least in the hospitals, are trying to address this. But there are many COVID patients who are not in the hospitals, who are recuperating in their homes, or who are in isolation, that may not be receiving mental health support. And finally, I just want to add, sort of, to take a step back. In an ideal world, when we talk about mental health, we want to talk about prevention. So not reaching people when they're already distressed, but building their resilience even before they reach a point where they really need professional help. So I guess one question that I'd like you to think about is, to what extent can we build resilience now, even among those who are not moderately distressed? Can we build it in our schools? Can we build it in our workplaces? Can we build it in our communities, especially those who we think might be at risk? So at this point, we're still trying to find solutions to the mental health issues that our countrymen need. But we are offering this platform as one solution among many, and I know there are many others, but this is just, I guess, our little contribution to helping the country. So I guess I'll stop here and I will open the floor for questions from our audience. So tell me what you think and tell me if you want to know more.
Thank you, Ma'am Gina. Thank you. So at this point, I'd like to ask our participants, particularly in the chat area, no, that you can throw in your questions or your comments, and then we'll go through some of them and direct it to Ma'am Gina. We'd also like to address our FB audience right now. If it's okay with you, we posted a link to the G Meet so that you could join us in the G Meet, because there will be another program running in a while in the FB page of Ateneo. No? But we want to continue this very important discussion. And so I'll start off the question with something a little technical. All right.
Sure.
Dr. Nandi Aldaba. Hi, Doc Nandi is with us.
Yeah, I
Was
saw that as well.
asking, oh, what was the p-value raw, ma'am?
It was 0.05, doc.
0.05 daw.
So pretty
Ayan.
good, not bad. Right.
Yes, yes. And for me, man, we've been listening to the researches of the past acts of Magis sessions. No? Each one clearly was very important, but in a way, your presentation today, I guess, is most relatable to the layperson. No?
Oh, thank you.
And
Maybe
then we
because
would
we all
like to
feel
thank
it.
you. Exactly, exactly. No?
Yeah.
I also felt the math. It kind of hurt here when I was listening to last time. No, but um, because we are talking about people, kumusta naman po kayo at yung team ng Katatagan? No? I mean, you are frontliners yourselves in a way. All right. We just want to know, kumusta naman ang team? Kumusta kayo?
Um, you know what? Like we teach, our challenge is to practice what we preach. So
All
just
right.
as we teach people how to care for themselves, we also
Mm-hmm.
need to find time to do self-care. And so what we
Yeah.
try to do is kinakamusta din namin yung aming fasis every now and then.
All right.
Uh, just kasi tao lang ka din kami. So,
Mm-hmm.
so we also need to manage our own emotions during this time. So we well, ako, I try to practice what I preach. Um,
Yes.
yeah,
Okay, ma'am. And then,
thank
based
you.
on the results that you've yielded so far,
Mm-mm.
as a researcher, as someone who's very much immersed in these situations, were the results somewhat expected, or was anything particularly surprising to you?
Um, they were actually what we had wanted to see. Um,
Okay.
I wasn't actually expecting they would already be significant given our small sample sizes. Kumbaga sabi ko, sige,
Yeah.
sumpot sa buwan. Tingnan lang natin
Mm.
kung may trend.
Yes.
So, pretty happy about the results. I think what was unique for me or I wanted to flag was, for example, the issue of information and access to news. Because we
Yes.
often think of that as good, right? We do want people to be informed, but we also need to be conscious about the kind of information that we are exposing people to. So
That's
I think
right.
that's important as well to
Yes. Yes.
know when to shut off the FB or to know when to shut off the TV or radio because we are getting stressed by it already. I don't want to advocate, I don't want people to say I'm advocating apathy or, because we do want to be activists also in our own right. But
Hmm.
I think there needs to be a balance also on what is good for you also and how you can regulate your emotions, especially during this time.
And typically, ma'am, no, this type of topics, when you talk about it, when people want to be heard, in a way, it's ideal when it's face to face. You know, parang you're in your
Yeah,
office, in your consultation room, whatever.
sure.
No, but you know the person is there.
Yeah.
Do we have feedback from those who have participated in the online platform? How the online relationship, so to speak, of this is for them? Parang is it working just as if it were face to face, or there's a different effect on them?
Okay. So I'm gonna ask I'm seeing some facilitators here who are in the room. I don't know if they're still here. Let me just double check. Ha? I
Sure,
know we have
ma'am.
some there. Who are here who might be able to share. Ayan, Gail. Sorry, Gail. I'm gonna put you on the spot. Or
Good
Jason.
afternoon, Gail. Is it?
Gail and
Hi.
hi, Gail. Gail is from Ateneo de Naga. Go, Gail.
Hello, Gail. Good afternoon. Welcome to Acts of
Hello, good afternoon,
Magis.
Sir Chris. Hi, Ma'am
Oh.
Gina.
Hi.
Yeah, there's a lot of difference because you don't really get to see your participants. There
Mm.
are dull moments that you might think that they're not responding to you, but because you don't
Okay,
really see them. But
Yeah.
that's right.
at times they're quiet because they're also thinking, they're also processing. So
Mm.
that makes a lot of difference. There are also times when you feel that you're not connected anymore to your participants. But when they begin to speak up, that's when you see that there's still pala that connection. And
Okay.
we we have observed that the first sessions are really quiet, but
Mm.
towards the end of the sessions, like the last three sessions, they begin to share, they begin to also blend with the other participants. I just like to share what one of our participants said, that it feels awkward, that at the start of the session you really do not know each other and you also do not see each other, but as they went along, they felt more comfortable na. So yun po, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gail. Right.
Thanks, Gail.
We we have a question. I'll get a question from our audience.
Sure.
This is from Miss Joyce Panares, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there have been warnings that mental health could be the next COVID-related crisis. All right. Are you seeing the same scenario in the Philippines?
Yes. Yes. So when we do normal surveys, and we are seeing an increase in anxiety, we are seeing an increase in depressive symptoms as well. So yes.
So that's well, I guess that's something for us to really consider,
Yeah.
at this point, and thankfully we have these platforms that could mitigate,
Yeah.
such things, Ma'am, before I pose a question lang, I'd like to do a shout out. This
Sure.
came from our FB comments, no. Miss
Okay.
Ninay Litz. Miss Ninay Litz is a nurse, a frontliner,
Mm-hmm.
and is also a COVID survivor
Oh,
herself,
okay.
no.
Okay.
So as a special shout out. We're happy you're well and with us, Miss Litz. And thank you for joining us also this afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Going back, ma'am, to the question, and also to very recent news, there would be a GCQ already, probably
Yeah.
by next week.
Yeah.
Um, what might the impact of that GCQ be on the psychological states naman of our
Mm.
citizens?
To be honest, what we are fearing is that, because if people don't understand that GCQ means that that they don't understand that the disease is still there and that we can contract the disease still. And so there might be a tendency is dahil parang nakawala tayo, di ba? So we are not careful anymore. So all the precautions of staying at home and distancing and washing of hands, really scared that people will not listen to those. And then what we
Mm.
might see is that hindi pa nga, feeling ko nga, hindi pa bumababa na ba yung wave
I
natin?
don't I don't think so. I don't
Di
think so.
ba? So parang dun ako natatakot. Na parang if mag-spike na naman ang illness and disease, ano lang yan eh,
Mhm.
parang cycle lang yan. Di, babalik
Yeah.
na naman tayo sa lockdown or babalik na naman
Mm.
tayo sa depression or grief
That's right.
kasi mas marami nang namamatay. So, what I guess the important thing and the really unusual thing about this crisis compared to other natural crises, right? Or disasters where tapos na yung bagyo, diba?
Mm-mm.
May certain period tapos na yon. Eh ito,
Yeah,
this is going to be a long time. And so
exactly.
we really need to dig deep and develop that resilience because we will need to be resilient for a long time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we're in it for it's not a sprint, it's a
No,
marathon.
it is. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
And then going back lang, ma'am, to the previous question about how mental health could be the next quote unquote COVID, in terms of how
Mm-mm.
widespread it might be. Uh, are there, well, the question here is, are there any government interventions, or at least planned government interventions,
Mm-mm.
to sort of address that potential problem?
Um, there, right now, for example, the NCMH, they've been pretty active in trying to deliver psych first aid.
Okay.
And to try to deliver mental health, especially to frontliners. So there are some
Okay.
initiatives, but yun nga, parang I really don't think we should depend on the government to provide all the mental health um, support that our countrymen
Yes.
need. First of all, they're very undermanned. DOH has a mental health program and I can probably count how many people are there in that program. We only have one national center for mental health for the entire country. And so that's
Mm-mm.
why we're really advocating a settings approach, which means that
Mm-mm.
schools, workplaces, we really need to step up and to provide the mental health needs that our students, our workers need. Let's
That's
not
right.
depend on the government because they're already struggling with providing for the physical and health needs, right?
That's
So
right.
I'm sure they're trying, but we also need to do our part.
That's right. And alongside that, no, one of our friends, Miss Matic, has also said that media could also
Yeah,
help in that area, no,
yeah,
and give us more good news, like what you had shown earlier. No, I will check that out later. No,
some good
I think
news. Yeah, I
some
love
good
that.
news.
And
Yes.
I want to respond to what Matek's saying. One of the things that for us is still a quandary is how do we deliver these kinds of resilience lessons to those who don't have access to the internet?
That's
And if you
right.
take a look at our poor, they don't have internet access. So, our, so we know that we're probably hitting only a certain socioeconomic class in this
Mm-mm.
intervention, right? So the dilemma
That's right.
is how do you deliver this to those who don't have internet in their homes? Um, in After Hayan, the Psych Association worked with Knowledge Channel of ABS-CBN, and we helped them
Mm-mm.
develop psych first aid videos that were being used. Unfortunately, ABS-CBN is off the air, but my question is, are there other outlets? Are there other media outlets that are willing to bring out resilience messages, resilience lessons to those
Mm-mm.
who don't have access to the internet or not tech savvy? So marami
Mm-mm.
pang kailangan gawin in that sense.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, it's nice that you said something about that. That was actually my next question. No? How do you reach the poor? Yung nasa
Yeah,
laylayan, ika nga nila.
yeah.
Um,
True.
yes. But then,
Yeah.
ma'am, sorry if I think you could see your chat, no? Could if you could add to the Miss Joyce
Media
Panares, sorry.
outfits.
Oo. Has some suggestions there also.
KBP. Yeah.
KDP would be able to help. Yes. Thank you, Miss Joyce, for the
Yeah.
suggestions.
Because
Maybe
after Hayan, I remember a lot of information was through community radio or through
yes, ma'am.
radio. So
That's
that's
right.
something that we have not been able to get to yet.
Yes. And on that note, ma'am, maybe one is an invitation. Of course, we have Radyo Katipunan,
Oh, that's
87.9
right.
of the
Nga.
Ateneo.
That's
I'll
right.
book you there. All right, we'll see each other there again. And hopefully, through our media partners listening right now, buti
Mm-mm.
na lang, telegenic si Doc Gina. She could get a slot in one of your shows. No? Why not? No? And of course, our other friends from Katatagan. And maybe just as a closing question, if there are people who would like to help with this advocacy that Katatagan is doing, that you are doing, how could they
Okay.
reach out to you?
So, sorry, I'm gonna flash this. I don't know if you see this.
Yes, ma'am, we can see it.
Okay. So you can actually email us, uh, or you can visit the website itself. For those of you
Mm-hmm.
who are, I know there is a number of psych people here. The PAP Special Interest Group on Mental Health and Psych Support. There's also an FB page for the PAP Substance Use Prevention Group because we are trying
Mm-hmm.
to prevent an increase in substance use, which happens during disasters or
Mm-hmm.
crisis. So I don't know if you saw that clip where pagkatapos ng lockdown, nagdagsaan yung mga tao para bumili ng alcohol. So may ganang
Yes,
klaseng,
yung ibang klaseng alcohol, no?
oo. So may ganang
Oo.
klaseng response kasi nga, they use it to self-medicate. So they use
That's right.
substances to self-medicate the anxiety.
That's right.
So we're also
Yeah.
trying to avoid addiction and dependence on substances. So those are those are the mechanisms that you can contact us. For those of you who really just want to experience it, the katatagan.org website, you can sign up for classes there. If you can't find a schedule that fits you, what you can do is you can form a group of people, say if about eight people, 6 to 10 people perhaps, and then request for us from us a schedule depending on what
Okay.
your available schedule is, and we can see if
Mhm.
we can match you with a volunteer facilitator. So that's another way na parang intact groups, you can do that
Yes.
as well.
Okay.
So if
And
you have a,
just
sorry. So if
go
you have
ahead,
a,
man. Go ahead.
if you have a like, if you have a prayer group, di ba? Or if you have a family group that you all
Mhm.
want to go through the experience together, pwede din yon. You just email us to request a facilitator. And I'd just like to make a shout out and thank all the people from the Psych Association who've just so generously given of themselves. So when we did our initial call, we had about 400 people saying, I want to
Wow.
help.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
So, malalaki yung puso ng psych community. So, let's use those big hearts to help other people and help ourselves.
Yes. And just to share, ma'am, I think I mentioned this to you a few days back. I
I know,
did check
Chris.
out Katatagan. I'm happy
The
to be part of the
videos.
18%. I
Thank
do
you.
plan to live a little longer for my family, so
Thanks,
I'm happy to
Chris.
hear. But also, no, again, to of course, to Ma'am Gina and to everyone out there, we hope you could hear our applause. But since you can't, I'll follow what you guys do. You have a heart there. This one goes
Thank
out to
you.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right. I
Thank you,
usually
Chris.
give Korean hearts. Now you get a bigger one.
Okay.
Okay. Ma'am, any last words before we close our session?
So I just really want to say to people there who have been um, experiencing things that they've never experienced before. It's okay if you're not okay at this time. What you're feeling is perfectly normal given the abnormal situations. But don't be afraid to reach out and seek help. You're not less of a person just because you need a little help. Everybody needs a little help now and then. And what we're seeing is that maybe because we are collectivist in nature, there is a strength in numbers. And so
Mhm.
beyond just getting help one on one, we think that there are people who thrive more when they are with other people. So we do believe that we are stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc Gina. And thank you very much to all our audience members who joined us this afternoon. We're happy to tell you that the research of Doc Gina as well as our past guests are all in the archium.ateneo.edu. Right, you could see the papers there, you could download it and also share it. No, but also one good news is that while we initially prepared for 4 acts of Magis, capping the month off with Doc No Less than Doc Gina, a new set of 4 is lined up.
Amazing.
All right, for June. No? So another set of acts of Magis, another set of stories of hope. No? While we will be touching on other matters, not just COVID related matters, we're happy to share all this good news, all this good research work also to the community. And so we hope to see you again. Please watch out for the ads on the Ateneo Facebook account and all the Ateneo official platforms for the upcoming Acts of Magis. But for now, we'd like to thank you and wish you well